So welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us. My name is Daisy Casillas. I am a fourth year business major and comm minor. That's why I'm involved in PRSSA. I think business and communications have a lot to do with one another and just go hand in hand. Part of eBoard with me is Hannah. She's our VP. And then we also have here Mazani. She's our president. And then we have our treasurer, Kanaya, and Dr. Kaib is our faculty supervisor. So I want to go ahead and introduce our panelists. I'm excited that they're here joining us and able to share all of, okay, awesome. I can see everyone now. That's great. Okay, great. So we'll start with Mr. Jason Rollins. He joined us first. So Mr. Jason Rollins has extensive experience at many global Atlanta-based companies, including IHG Hotels and Resorts, Edelman and MSL Group, Inspire Brands, where he was a key member of award-winning Arby's marketing team that delivered the Pharaoh hat and Jon Stewart activations, along with 23 consecutive quarters of the same store sales growth. He has also led internal and external communications for large-scale transformation programs for multi-billion-dollar brands, including Crown Plaza Hotels and Resorts and the Arby's brand revitalization. He currently serves as the Director of Marketing and Communications for Dematic, a global intralogistics innovator that designs brands and supports intelligent, automated solutions for manufacturing, warehouse, and distribution environments for some of the world's leading brands. His work at these organizations has become case studies for our profession, and he has volunteered his time to serve as a speaker or panelist for many PRSA Georgia events and contributed content to various publications so that others can learn from his work. In addition to making an impact through his involvement in PRSA, he has served the community with his time, expertise, and passion. Jason most enjoys giving back by mentoring the next generation of marketing and PR professionals and serving organizations focused on children in need. He has served as a frequent guest speaker and adjunct professor of marketing and PR at his MBA alma mater, Mercer University. Within community-based organizations, he volunteers as a member of the marketing committee for Kate's Club, a local nonprofit dedicated to helping kids grieve after losing a parent or sibling, and volunteers with Empty Stocking Fund, a nonprofit dedicated to ensuring underprivileged kids have presents to open at Christmas. Welcome, Jason. Awesome. So next, you're welcome. So next I want to introduce Ms. Gina Espinoza. She is the second panelist here with us. She is the founder and managing partner of G Public Relations, a multicultural communications based in Atlanta and offices in Miami, Houston, Los Angeles, and Mexico. Gina is a communications strategist and publicist who's worked with for-profit companies and nonprofit organizations to increase awareness of their brand, increase sales, and enhance messaging to both the Hispanic and mainstream markets. She has an array of clients from the hospitality, construction, retail, and entertainment industries, many of whom in Latin America. Gina has served as an advisor to numerous organizations, including the Latin American Association, the Georgia Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, the Latin American Chamber of Commerce, Ser Familia, the Center for Civil and Human Rights, the Rialto Center for the Arts at GSU, and the Ginny Milner Foundation. She served as a board member of the CEO Soccer Foundation, a high-level organization that worked to bring the World Cup to Atlanta and pave the way for the soccer craze in Atlanta. She's been an advisor to the Consulate General of Mexico in Atlanta and its cultural arm, the Institute of Mexico. Originally from Mexico City, Gina came to the United States in 1998 as a Miami-based producer and presenter for the BBC. She moved to Atlanta in 2002 and joined CNN in 2003 as a producer for a variety of news, finance, and entertainment shows. She later worked as a news editor for Mundo Hispánico and as a director of public relations for the Georgia Hispanic Chamber of Commerce before leaving to form G Public Relations. In recognition of her success, the Latin American Chamber of Commerce in 2019 honored Gina as its Small Business Person of the Year. Welcome, Ms. Gina. And lastly, I want to introduce our third panelist, Austin Roebuck, who focuses in affairs and communications, leading with a strong track record representing some of the world's top brands. His work is grounded in His work is grounded in strategic thinking. His focus areas include ESG, sustainability, government relations, and financial communications and marketing. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Okay, so I just kind of want to give our panelists, just want them to maybe mention something, kind of just introduce themselves to everyone here joining us today. Jason, we can start with you.
Sure. Thanks, Daisy. So I'm Jason Rollins. As Daisy mentioned, I'm sorry I submitted the long version of my bio there, but didn't mean to do that. But anyway, I've spent my entire career in Atlanta, so about 16 years now. I have gone back and forth between the agency side and the client side. Currently on the client side, and I expect to probably stay on this side for a while. But have a mixture of experience, everything from consumer brands, some B2B, spent a number of years at Children's Healthcare of Atlanta, which is a wonderful organization. And for the past 8 years or so, I've been working for global multi-billion-dollar companies, the last 4 years with IHG, and 4 years before that with Arby's, which is now Inspire Brands. So a good mix of experience. As you can probably imagine, COVID has been very hard on the hotel industry in particular. IHG, along with Marriott, Hilton, all the others have taken a huge hit. So that's been tough to see. And I think it's going to take a while to come back until people are feeling comfortable traveling again. So I'm very excited to have just accepted a new job with another global company. It's called Dematic. They're based here in Midtown Atlanta, and they are a global supply chain and logistics company that literally builds technology and innovation for warehouses specifically. So think about like robots that move things from one side of the warehouse to the other, and technology that handles fulfillment and anything within the four walls of a warehouse. Dematic is the leading provider of globally. So it's going to be new and exciting, totally different industry for me. I start in 2 weeks, so very, very excited about that, and super glad to be here with you all today.
Great for sharing, and congratulations.
Thank you.
So next, Ms. Gina, would you like to elaborate and share a little bit more about your career path?
Well, I'm a journalist by training. I was a journalist for over 20 years. And telling story has been my passion. I always, I was lucky enough to be able to travel to many exotic and not very peaceful places around the world. I was a conflict journalist. Which means not only I covered everything from hurricanes to wars, but I also had the chance to tell good stories. And when the time came up to make a decision about what else I wanted to do, I think public relations came as a natural extension of what I was doing. So that's what I've been doing mostly all these years. I also have a degree in plastic arts, and I'm a very creative person. So I combine all that. I combine the storytelling with creativity, and I've been helping my clients to tell their story, to find what they don't know. Sometimes they don't know about themselves, and they and I help them to find a creative way to communicate what they are to the others. And what else can I tell you? It's been very fulfilling because I speak two languages, Spanish and English. So that's also another thing that has been very interesting, to help my clients to tap to the other side. I have Hispanic clients who are very interested in reaching out to the general market and the opposite way. So it's fun. I really like it. And let me introduce you, since we're here. My husband and partner, Mark Meltzer, also a journalist. He was working with Atlanta Business Chronicle for over 20 years.
22 years with the Chronicle, the last 20 as executive editor, and I retired in March. And so I've had a lot of interactions with public relations people professionally. I'm also on the board of the Atlanta Press Club, former president, member of the executive committee. So I interact with a lot of journalists and PR people through that organization.
So now I'm very lucky to have him as my VP of content. And so we have, what you have in front of you is two journalists that decided to step in the dark side.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. I love that. How about you, Austin? What can you share with us about your career path?
Yeah, thank you all for having me. I'm Austin Roebuck. I'm a communications manager with the Coca-Cola Company, and I work in government relations and communications there. So I've been in the public affairs world for about a decade now, but I'm not so far removed from the seats you guys are in. I very much remember my senior year thinking, what is the path into the industry? What job am I going to take once I'm sort of out in the real world? And I very much appreciate what you guys are going through. I started out in politics. I did campaigns, some communications with that, and worked as a political staffer. But I quickly realized that I could do the things I loved, and I'll be blunt, make more money and have more influence working in the corporate world. So I quickly moved into doing government relations and public relations at corporations. I worked for a company, Yamaha Motor Corporation. They make all sorts of products from motorcycles to boats, and they have a headquarters here in Atlanta for the US. And then I went over to Coca-Cola a few years later and have really enjoyed my time there. It's given me the opportunity to lead some really cool campaigns, see the world. I'm really passionate about public relations. When my friends tell me about their jobs, I'm always like, I'm glad that you enjoy that, but I have the coolest career. Public relations allows you to touch so many different aspects of an organization, especially global PR, which we're talking about today. You get to see how a message will be changed as it crosses different cultures, or it touches different audiences who have different perspectives or priorities that they need to hear from your organization. And how do you balance it sometimes when you have competing priorities from two different important stakeholders and you can't always satisfy everyone? So that strategy and just the fun of it, getting to touch what your marketing colleagues are doing, touch what just unique experiences you wouldn't be able to have in other career fields. That's something cool about PR. I'm glad you're interested in PR, and look forward to this discussion.
Okay, great. Awesome. Thank you. So we have two major questions. And then the first one is just talking about how COVID-19 has affected your practice and maybe your day-to-day. Mr. Jason, what can you share about that?
Sure. And quite a year it's been, and impacted in countless ways, I would say. But some of the first things that come to mind, a lot of PR campaigns, events, conferences, trade shows, et cetera, they're all either canceled, postponed, or trying to do it virtually. My new company, Dematic, just hosted their biggest annual trade show a couple weeks ago and did it virtually for the first time. And that's an event that the comms team leads from soup to nuts. And they were very nervous about trying to execute a 3-day long trade show that usually generates a good portion of their annual sales and revenue coming out of that conference. So they had all of their C-suite speakers presenting. They brought in industry experts to present. So it was quite a large scale production, all virtual. So it can be done, but certainly a lot of learning to be able to pull it off successfully.
I definitely agree with you. It's definitely a shift in what we're used to. Ms. Gina, what can you share with us about how COVID-19 has affected your practice and your day-to-day?
Well, it has been interesting in many ways. In let's say that we have different clients, and the clients in the hospitality, all the they were gone. I mean, all of a sudden we found that little by little they were closing and just letting us know that they won't be able to pay. So we decided to stick with them. Some of them, the hotels in Mexico, one especially implemented a very fun campaign, and that was called Together We Are, or something like that. And it was in Spanish. The downside of that campaign that was super fun, it was aimed at helping people to cope with the confinement easier by teaching them recipes or handcrafts or things like that were absolutely, or yoga exercises, meditation by the ocean. So you could see this beautiful scenery, and but everything was in Spanish. So it was, and that part was challenging, because as much as we were trying to pitch this to the non-Hispanic market, people were really interested, but they wanted to know what they were saying. They wanted to get the recipe right. So that was the challenging part. So everything was about helping our clients to maintain their brand afloat, alive, which they did a lot until they were really in problems. We were not expecting that the crisis was going to last as long as it has. And that we are trying to come up with something different right now, but between the hurricane, one of the hotels is right at Playa del Carmen. They had 2 hurricanes. They never had hurricanes. They usually never do. And this year they had 2, not only the pandemic, but also 2 hurricanes. So that has been beyond challenging. We're going to regroup by the end of this year, and we're going to come up with something else, because, you have things like that. And also they have been having some episodes of violence in the beach that also they have been affecting the way that well, this is interesting. Despite of that, the number of visitors to Cancun and that part of Mexico, it's going up. People really want to travel. They are desperate for that. So that's the hospitality. For the rest, some of our other clients who were in problems, they were developing more strategies to help the community, the same thing. What we saw and we were able to step in is to help the community in fundraising. What else did we do?
Park and Ride that became a testing location.
Yes, and many other things. The Georgia Hispanic Chamber of Commerce is one of our clients, and the chamber was having webinars all the time. They were having all kind of communications to let the Hispanic business owners how to behave, how to request the help, the financial help. That was one of the biggest things, one of the biggest issues. So we were very active in all what you know, like crisis management. So that has been keeping us really, really busy. And now, again, we are approaching the end of the year, the planning and all that. So we are very busy right now, helping our clients to see ahead and to gather all the tools, all the learning, and to recreate their strategies to move forward next year.
There's a lot of new business opportunities at the end of the year from clients who have been impacted financially during the year, and they want to get back to normal next year. So they want to gear up their public relations to increase their sales and get things back to normal. So that's been good. We had another client that likes to do big events, sponsor big events, and that was a really tricky one. We just couldn't really do what he wanted. He really wasn't interested in sponsoring virtual events. And so we kind of had to put him on hold. We've done a few things for him, but he just didn't want to do the kinds of things that could be done this year. So that was a tricky one.
There's definitely new precautions that, we're just not used to, that we have to take in order to stay safe as possible. Mr. Austin, what can you share about how COVID has impacted your practice and your day-to-day?
Yeah, I would say there are both opportunities and challenges. Obviously, the human impacts are first and foremost, and no benefits are going to outweigh the human impacts. But the pandemic has shown the value of public relations to organizations. There's something that I want you to remember if you're not familiar with the concept yet. It's called ESG. It stands for Environment, Society, and Governance. And it's really an emerging field. And it's something that public relations really has the ability to own within your organization. ESG is sort of what investors are focusing on. It's what corporations are focusing on. NGOs are focusing on it. And basically what it is how do we mitigate risk over the long term for our organization by doing business the right way? How do we put people first? How do we think about our environment? You think about this past year with not just the pandemic, but the social justice conversation that's been going on. Management is looking to the public relations team to be key advisors. How do we approach? And you're not just simply writing the press release or determining what the key messages are. You're helping define business strategy. Or it would be the same as true if you're in a charitable organization or something similar. So while there are certainly downsides, you miss those hallway conversations. You miss being able to talk to your coworkers, and business really does get done sometimes in those simple hallway conversations. Now you're reduced to email or scheduling a meeting. So it's not easy, but I think it's shown the value of our field, and it has opened up new opportunities. Something COPE participates in every year is something called United Nations General Assembly Week in New York. Typically, that is a real logistical challenge. We fly several key leaders and support staff up to New York, and we're trying to figure out how do you get someone from this building's 27th floor over to uptown, the 17th floor of this building, and are we going to be able to do that in 2 hours or not? During the pandemic, it was simply, well, I'll log off the Zoom call, I'll take 45-minute refresh, and I'll log on to the next one. I can still see my wife, I'm not away, it's wonderful. But as I was saying, you don't get to mingle with the audience afterwards and build some of those valuable connections. So I think that it's going to change the way we do business to some degree. I think we'll see more virtual events in the future. And I think there's a lot of benefits to that. But I don't think, hopefully once we have a vaccine and we're able to get back to a little bit more normal life, you're going to see in-person events, work at the office, go away entirely. There's value to both. And I think we've seen that over this past year.
I definitely agree. You have some great points. Okay, so then our next question, major question that we have is talking about the current political situation and how that maybe some of that uncertainty is affecting your practice. Jason, you can start with you.
Yeah, sure. So I feel like this has been a year of multiple crises layered on top of one another. Obviously, there's just so much going on, and all of the political stuff has made it, even harder, I think, for people to stay focused and optimistic about things. But I've found that, organizations for the most part have to be very careful with taking a strong political stance. We typically encourage leaders to, even if they are, very heavy Democratic, Republican, wherever it may be, they need to be mindful of what they say, because the chances that there could be great differences even among the C-suite leadership team are very great. And I have found that sometimes you may think a colleague or someone may have certain views, and you find out later that you were completely wrong, and you were like, oh my gosh, what may I have said in front of that person that I now regret. So I think you have to be very careful with the counsel that you provide to others across the business. And then when working with the media as well, I mean, you have to be very careful with your messaging that you're putting out on behalf of your company or your client, that you're not going to come off the wrong way, or even worse, offend someone, or have a headline published where you're like, oh my goodness, that is not what I had intended to say, and that came off wrong. So I think trying to stay neutral is really been the key.
Okay, Gina, what can you share with us about how our current political situation is affecting?
I agree with Jason. We work with a few organizations, and we have such a polarized environment right now. Not only, politically talking, but also the ethnic part comes in. I'm a Latina, so there are many things that affect us, and everything has to be said in a certain way because you don't want to offend anybody. And I think we're learning this. I don't know really how to say this, but I've been in the communications business for a long time, and my experience has been from things that nobody care about, the terms, and I'm trying to think of an example, to now we cannot say everything. We can just be super careful when we craft a message. And we saw it this year was especially interesting. Again, we work with organizations that include people with different affiliations, political affiliations, or cultural backgrounds, and it's a challenge sometimes. We have to talk a lot before we can craft a message. We have to consult with the different members of the board, and it sometimes takes time, but it's totally it's something that definitely you have to take into consideration these days.
And I think business hates uncertainty, and there's been a lot of uncertainty and volatility this year. So that makes it hard for people to make decisions. And I think if we get to a more stable climate post-election, that'll make things a little easier for everybody.
Thank you. And Austin, what can you share with us?
Yeah, I would just give the advice, don't lead with politics, lead with value and purpose. And I don't mean for that to sound buzzwordy. What I mean is any organization that you're able to play a role in the PR efforts of that group, make sure that you have a clearly defined purpose, vision, and a set of values, and really articulate them out. And they'll be different from one organization to the next. But if you're in-house with that group, define which characteristics are valuable to see in your employees, and what that's maybe not a traditional business path your business is going to value. For example, at Coca-Cola, something that we care a great deal about is sustainability. And one example would be water. You might not initially think of investing in water sustainability as something that Coke should do, but it's the #1 ingredient in our any beverage we make. And so Coke has a commitment to every year replenish more water than we use in our drinks back to the earth. And they do that through a variety of ways, including providing water access, reforestation that captures more water and provides it back to communities. There's lots of ways to do it. But that is something that is not political, even though different leaders may take different political positions. And you need to have a strategy and a plan in place. If this party or that party wins, maybe the way you go about something is slightly different, but you have your core positions that you're not going to budge on as an organization. And that's true no matter who's leading in a given area. And most organizations, if they touch the political arena, are going to work with, in the United States context, both Republicans and Democrats. And that's probably a good thing. That's probably a sign of a healthy society. And as long as you have your core values and your business purpose, you're going to have to pay attention to politics. You're going to have to strategize appropriately, but you're not going to have to be twisting in the wind. Goodness, we took this position 18 months ago and we rolled the dice that this person was going to win and they didn't. That's not where you want to be. You want to have that grounded position, and then from there, build out contingency plans and different ways of operating in sometimes turbulent political environment.
I couldn't agree more with that, Austin. I've seen so many companies have really leaned in over the past 10 years in particular into developing a strong purpose in mission and values. And I think, when for PR folks, when you're interacting with the media and politics comes up, or you get a question related to politics, that's always where you want to take the conversation back to, is to point to those purpose, values, mission, vision. That's how that you can make sure that you get the appropriate message across without crossing a line and engaging in a conversation that wouldn't be of benefit to the company.
That's true even in the nonprofit world. I remember a few years ago, the Susan G. Komen organization got into trouble because they became very political, and half of their donors didn't want to donate to them anymore because of that.
In regards to the global environment, to what extent do you think that maybe there would have to be some flexibility in that, depending on maybe another country's view on firms in the US, or maybe like cultural differences? How much maybe room is there how much room for flexibility can there be?
Yeah, so I'll kind of answer a slightly different question, which is, how do you go about navigating those differences? Because really, you're not flexible on your core values. Your core values are true everywhere you operate. Now, you need to be sure what's a core value and what's perhaps a preference. And in the area of values, I would say you stay true, but perhaps in a business tactic, I'm sure through PRSSA, you've learned the differences in strategies and tactics. And tactics can be pretty flexible, but your values aren't. One way that Coke goes about navigating those unique differences across cultures is we really try to hire and even produce close to the market. So all over the world, anywhere you go, the Coke you're drinking in that spot was almost certainly made within 150 miles of where you're standing. And the employees that are working in that factory and working in the headquarters of that area look like the people of that community. They're most of the time going to be from that community. And when you have sort of a global network that you're able to tap into that is from this community, speaks this language, both in the literal sense and in sort of the more cultural, what is life like here sense, you're going to not be guessing through your American eyes, what should we do here? But you're going to have first-person accounts that you can rely on and learn how to navigate. And that will save you from a lot of heartache. It's a tremendous value in global public relations to be able to talk to your colleagues from a different background, a different perspective, and really see where some of your assumptions are wrong, and also where you can work together to really position your organization the best possible way.
And this kind of, I think, Gina, relates to how you were saying the campaign that was successful, but it couldn't really fit into people that didn't speak Spanish, right, and couldn't understand it.
Right. United States and Mexico, we have a lot of things in common. So in a cultural, let's say, we are so close, so that we really share a lot of the cultural values in a way. I really don't know how to explain this, but the thing is, you don't have to worry too much about offending someone by saying something that might be misinterpreted in this country. It's all about language. Eventually, what we did is to subtitle, or they did, the production team did all this subtitling thing. And that's the way that they have been sorting out that campaign. But something that happens a lot is that they have been, and with these elections, it's interesting about politics is that they have noticed that not all the Hispanics, we are the same. We don't speak the same. We don't believe in the same. And it's more obvious than ever. We knew that 20 years ago, but apparently they just discovered that. So, and by saying that is that I think that in PR, when it's about PR, multicultural PR, especially when it's about translating, it's very important to find the right words, the words that appeal to your market, to your audience. And it's all about that. I think after this year, after this election, after learning all about these differences in the different market groups, I'm sure that the advertising, the PR, and marketing, of course, is going to change the way that they address the different groups in the Hispanic market. They are not going to be telling the same story to the Latinos in Florida and the Latinos in Texas and the Latinos in Nevada. They knew that Mexicans, we think, believe, and speak in a different way than what the guys from Venezuela, especially the Venezuelans. They are a group that's growing and it's becoming very, very influential in the country. So that's something that I could say, talking about multicultural market.
Gina, I think you just hit on a great point for any young public relations professional to remember, which is really defining the audiences for your campaign. I highly recommend, you'll need to get a couple more years into your career, but I really recommend all of you to pursue your accreditation in public relations through PRSSA. I think you have to have about 5 years experience to do that, but something you'll learn through that process is really how to build an optimal communications plan. And what is the difference in a goal and objective, a strategy and a tactic? What publics are you trying to reach? And what you'll quickly learn is that it's taking the easy way out and not most effective to say, my audience is consumers. Well, there are a million different cross sections of consumers. Similarly, you can't say, I want to reach Hispanic people. As Gina just said, that is not really an effective approach, because when you get down to it, your tactics are going to kind of be shooting from the hip because you have too broad and undefined a group you're trying to reach. You really need to try and be specific with what type of audiences you want to reach and how you're going to go about reaching them. And as you kind of get more specific and put a higher value on strategy in public relations, you'll avoid some of those potholes in the road, and you'll shine to your bosses, and your organization will be better off for it. And I think you'll have a more fulfilling career.
Yep, great comments, Austin and Gina. Just to build on a couple of things in terms of how to be successful in rolling out a global program or a global campaign, which if you're sitting in the United States at a company's headquarters and you've been tasked with rolling out a global program, that can seem pretty daunting at first, for sure. But what I have found is that a lot of companies who operate globally will hire a comms and PR professional who is embedded within respective regions where they do a lot of business. And in a global role, those folks are your best friends because those are the folks that you can engage in a program or a campaign early on to make sure that whatever you're putting together, the messaging you're developing, the program, et cetera, will effectively land and resonate well in that respective country. And there's been a few instances where I've been on a team that did engage those regional folks as early as they probably should have, and then the train started to leave the station, and they finally connected with that person in Dubai or India, and they were like, "Whoa, that is not at all going to work here. That's not going to make any sense the way you framed it up, or even worse, that could offend someone here." So those partners in region, I have found to be critical business partners, and really folks that can add a lot of value and help make what could seem daunting in terms of rolling out something globally much more feasible.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for sharing. So just to elaborate on all those great suggestions for us, what would you say that we should remember going forward, like to help us in our career and as students and as young aspiring PR professionals? What can you share? We can start with you, Jason.
Sure. So I think the reality is that this is a tough market and a tough timing to enter the job market. But I also think there's opportunities. I think just in the past, as someone who was looking for a job myself up until a couple weeks ago, I can tell you that the market is definitely improving. I'm seeing more and more great companies are hiring at all levels. So I think we have turned a corner in terms of companies starting to rebound and starting to think about, to Mark's point, starting to plan for 2021 and start to think about their org structure and what resources they're going to need once we're getting back to more normalcy. So I would certainly feel encouraged on that front. I think that networking is, for me personally, has been critical. And I think now more than ever, you want to be talking to folks, participating in things like this, just getting to know folks, and continuing to build that network because, like I said, I've been in Atlanta for 16, almost 17 years, and I have never leaned into my network more so in the past few months while looking for a job. I mean, that's really been the only way that I've gotten an interview, because it's just so competitive right now, and there's so many people out of work that you've got to have a leg up, and the network is a really good way to do that.
Thank you. I know that's definitely helpful for all of us students here. And what can you share with us, Gina?
Well, Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, I think one thing that's true when you start any career is are you going to take a job just because that's the only job offered, or what kind of job do you want? It normally takes 5 to 7 years of a career to start to figure out what it is you like. Do you want to work for a nonprofit? Do you want to work for an agency? Do you want to work for a corporation? Do you want to be based in the US or based in another country? Do you want a small operation? Do you want to work for a giant global company? Those are all very different experiences, and you have to decide what's right for you personally. And it often takes trial and error to figure that out. So you take your first job and you work there for a year or two and go, this was okay, but I would, this was a small company and I'd rather work for a larger company. Or, it just takes you a while to figure it out. So be aware of that. And when you're offered a job, if you're offered multiple jobs, then, try to take the time to figure out not just which one pays more, but which one is more appropriate for you individually that you think you might be happier in, more successful in.
Well, yes. The satisfaction that your job will give you it has to dictate what you guys want to follow. I'm very proud of my past as a journalist, but as Austin was saying, now I have this passion for public relations. You have to follow your passion, either in a small firm or a corporation. I think, guys, congratulations, because this is a fantastic job. This is a great opportunity. And these are tough times, but everything will be better. we can see and we can sense in the way that the business is moving that the opportunities are there and they are going to flourish, and everything is going to get better, let's say. I'm an optimist, and I want you guys to be an optimist too. Optimistic. We might not be celebrating Thanksgiving, Christmas, Hanukkah with our families, but it doesn't matter. There are more coming ahead. So that's our message.
That's a great message. Thank you. That just made me smile. Austin, can you share with us some career tips?
Yeah, I completely agree with all of those career tips. 100%. Don't just focus on the money with your first job. There's going to be plenty of time for that over your lifetime. And sometimes the job that pays the most right off the bat is going to have a lower ceiling than jobs that there's the potential to grow over a lifetime. So don't let that cloud your thinking. Just a couple really practical pieces of advice. Get an internship if you still have time. I cannot tell you how strongly I believe in internships, even unpaid internships. I could tell you stories of friends who have gotten internships and where they're at today, and friends that didn't. And there's a mix of both. There's no one path to success, but I'll tell you in general, internships are a huge boon to your future career, in my opinion. And the work won't be flashy or exciting. It might even be boring, but you're showing a willingness to learn and initiative that will really help set you up for success. And you will look back several years later and realize that you gleaned some really valuable learnings and learned how to operate in an office or the culture that you want to work in earlier than some of your colleagues that are maybe showing immaturity in the workplace that you were able to get out of your system. I'm a huge believer in LinkedIn. I've gotten really great jobs off of LinkedIn. So some people think it's boring. Some people think it's kind of pretentious, and they're right. But LinkedIn is a really valuable way to stay connected to friends, to possibly future bosses or future people who are going to give you that recommendation 12 years from now that you had no idea when you friended them that that's how it's going to be. And recruiters look on LinkedIn. You might have never met a recruiter before who will ping you one day with an opportunity. And the last thing I will say is, like I said before, there's no one path to success. I know a very successful public relations person who started out in IT. So that's a very different field, but anything can happen. But what I'll tell you is probably the three main paths to success, the paths of least resistance that I've kind of seen, and certainly I might be missing something, but would be, like Gina shared, being a journalist. I think that if there's one skill set you need in public relations, it's knowing how to be a writer. And I doubt that there is a better way to get that skill set than being a journalist. So remember that public relations could be the long arc of your career, and the immediate future could be journalism and learning some really valuable skills and getting some amazing life experiences there. The second way would be going and working at a public relations agency. First off, an agency might be where you're able to get an internship. Even if not, you're going to be exposed to really cool work in the agency setting. You're going to have probably a diversity of clients that you get to interact with, and you're going to quickly build a resume. You're going to be able to say, I led this campaign. I helped land this particular earned media. But oftentimes the hours are long. The pay, like I said before, is going to come in the future. So know what you're getting into working for an agency, but tremendous value and a great way to launch a career in public relations. And then the last way would be sort of what I mentioned through politics. That was my career path. Reach out to your local congressman or a local politician that you believe in if you don't necessarily agree with the people in your community, and see if they have, first off, internships available. See if there's ways to work and support them for free, even just as volunteers on their campaigns. They also might be hiring for specific opportunities in Washington, D.C., or in Atlanta or in Georgia, or wherever you're looking to work. And particularly if you're willing to move for a job, that could be a very, there's lots of opportunity out there in that. especially in coming months, there will be opportunities there. And if you work in politics, you'll be able to bring a unique perspective and credibility for really important issues in public relations. And I think that's a good, much like a journalist, it's a good way to start out, not initially in the field, but transition into it. So just like everyone else said, network, and don't worry about using each interaction as a way to get something out of it. That will take care of itself over time. Just build relationships, care about the person sitting across the table from you, care about helping their career as much as you're helping your own. And over time, if you're diligent and strategic and focusing, you have a lot of opportunity for success.
And just a quick thing, in addition to what you said about networking, there are some groups that gather virtually. In the Georgia Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, they have a young organization within the organization that's called HYPE, Hispanic. You don't have to be Hispanic. If you want to join, you're welcome. Hispanic Young Professional. And it's a very cool, and entrepreneurs. It's a very cool organization. They have all these gatherings in Zoom. And that's the kind of things that you could do. I mean, if you don't want to go out there and put yourself in some kind of uncomfortable situation, but you still can go out there and you can meet, you can join chambers of commerce or any other young professional organizations. That's also something you can do.
That's great, Gina. I know we're short on time. I had just one kind of build on what Austin was saying about agencies and what Mark was saying about finding what interests you. The one other benefit to an agency environment and juggling all the different clients and industries, you will quickly find out what you like and what you don't like. And there's a lot of value in that type of exposure. And as a hiring manager, in looking at resumes with folks with agency experience, for me, and I know a lot of my peers, I always really value that, because I look at that and I'm like, okay, this person's, they spent a few years at a big agency or a small agency with all these clients and they were successful. Like that is a good sort of testing battleground, if you will, that I think a lot of hiring managers value, that the project management that's required in that environment, the exposure to all different clients and industries, and lots of different types of work. So that I think is two additional benefits to thinking about an agency at some point in your career.
Completely agree with that. And if I could just share one more, one more thought on Outlook. I was in a meeting the other day. When we have investor events at Coke, some of the public relations team has to get there at about 4 a.m. to prepare for the day's activities. And we we bring snacks and stuff, to help us stay motivated that morning. Do you know who got the coffee and the donuts for the event? It was a global vice president. This person has if you're interested in salary and that's part of your career, they have all those things. If you're interested in prestige, this person has a very prestigious role. If you're interested in influence, that's what this person has. But they still brought the coffee and the donuts because they didn't see themselves as outgrowing certain tasks. They didn't think this is beneath me about anything that they were asked to do. They just cared about the effectiveness of their team, the effectiveness of the project, and it served them over the course of their career. So I would say early on, that is a trap. You'll hear friends talk about that. You'll say, oh, I can't believe my boss asked me to do this thing or that thing. Certainly you'll see movies and TV shows that kind of imply that that's not the right attitude to have. But I'm telling you, if you can stay focused on servant leadership, leading even when you don't have the title, and not thinking anything is beneath you, being willing to do what you ask others to do, it will really serve you well. And so I just wanted to kind of put that in your ear now, because you will feel pressure not to think that way in the coming years. And I really encourage you to maintain that mindset.
Well, thank you so much, panelists, for sharing all of your knowledge and all of your experiences. I know we've all, this was great information for us to stay optimistic, like Gina said, in the coming future for us. Is there any way that we can keep communication if any of us have questions, maybe through LinkedIn? If y'all can put that in the chat, or so we can follow up with any of you if we have any remaining questions. I know we need to wrap up.
And quickly, if
Sure.
you guys want my email address, Kate, if you can share them. And any question you have, I know that I was not very specific. I have to admit that I'm not very good at speaking in public. Don't ask me why. But but guys, if you have any question about the multicultural market, any specific about how to craft a message for a different ethnic backgrounds, I'm open to that, and maybe we can do something down the road to talk about that specific. I would love to share my experiences in, and maybe we can talk about some internship later. Mm-hmm. Or mentorship as well.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. If you could share that with us, us students separately, Dr. Kai, Gina's information. And then we also have Jason here in Austin. Their information is here in the chat. I want to thank y'all so much again for being part of our panel. I know this is a crazy time, but it was great hearing your career experiences. And I want to thank also all the students here joining us. Thank you very much. Thank you so much, everyone.